Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Autism Now What podcast. Today, I'm speaking to my husband, Martin Gershlovitz, and we're going to be talking about all things autism. Many years ago, Martin was labeled Dr. Dad, and today he's going to share with you everything he's learned about autism over many, many years. Martin, how long has it been? 18 years?
Pretty much.
We have 3 boys. My oldest, David, is turning 20 this year, and he is profoundly autistic. I always say that we've already watched the movie of autism, so we know what's going to happen. Mart, what do you think about that movie of autism?
Yeah, I think we've seen everything that's possible. I think that, I don't know, anything that ever could have gone wrong went wrong. And we've seen absolutely each and every single aspect of autism.
Let's go back. Remember when David was 20 months and we visited that developmental specialist and she used that word autism for the first time? What did you think and how did you feel leaving her office?
I actually couldn't believe it was happening to us. You know, we're so absorbed in autism at this moment in time. Our lives have become, every waking minute, all we think about, all we talk about is autism. But at that point, I'd actually never heard or I wasn't exposed to anyone with autism. I had no idea what it meant. When it was first mentioned to me, I had done a bit of research because the reason why we went to the developmental specialist was because we suspected it. But we still knew very, very little. And I suspect most people know very, very little about it as well. And so when you get that diagnosis, I think it's a shock because you think, well, what does this mean? And well, the problem is that developmental specialist told us that he wouldn't talk again. He wouldn't talk ever, not again, but he wouldn't talk. He wouldn't hold down a job and we should just take out an insurance policy and make him comfortable. So that was a shock. It was a huge shock. But generally, I think shock is all that we were in at that point because we just didn't know what it meant. And so I think that's really where our journey began. And
I also remember being immobilized by shock. And remember, you used to come home and I was crying and crying and crying. And like every night you came home, you found me in tears.
Yeah, well, I think for maybe 2 or 3 years, you cried every day.
It was really, really hard to come to terms with, especially because I was pregnant with Ellie and we didn't know if Ellie would be okay.
Yeah, I think it was very, very difficult. And I think the whole time I always felt second in command. You were first in command. You were in the front of the battle. And so I think whatever you were going through was much worse than me. Maybe I try not to remember. I put things in a drawer. That's how I tend to actually cope with things. But if I try and remember, I was gutted. I was absolutely gutted. You know, all the things that you think, what does it mean to have a child and, you know, your dreams, your hopes, everything for this person just goes out the window. I think dealing with that was very difficult for me. And, you know, it's one thing if somebody says to you, you know, you've got to do a lot of work. You've got to just do this, do that, take this pill, take that pill, and eventually it'll come right. But I think because you're given such a permanent sentence that he won't ever be able to do this or that, I think that's what's so shocking.
So what is autism?
Well, you're the expert. You're the one who will come up with a definition. If you want to know what does autism mean to me, rather than just the definition, life is not going to be what you expected it to be. Your whole journey, your whole path will be completely different. Now, if there are any parents out there that think that they're going to try and hide this kid away or send him to a special school or do some kind of intervention that's going to take it away, they're very wrong. Well, if I think about it, for the first, maybe it was a year or 2 years, I was like that. I thought, well, maybe we can fix this thing, it'll go away, and then people won't even realize what we've been through. Let's not tell anybody about this autism. Let's not tell anybody how bad the situation is. We'll deal with it on our own. We'll do a bit of this, a bit of that, interventions, and then hopefully it'll come right. And then only once we realized, after doing the research and digging deep, we realized this was going to be a long game. And if we were going to get any help, we actually had to come out and tell people, because you can't exist in a vacuum in this world. You need to be speaking to people, interacting, and on many levels, autism for me is lifestyle, because our family developed a way of living with autism. We just were not like any normal family. I think every family has challenges. They go through the ups and the downs. But for us, it was this dramatic shift, this dramatic change. Couldn't have people over. Even once we were telling people, it was very difficult to actually have people over and go out and visit people, go to the shops, just do anything that a normal family would do. It was extremely challenging. So I think if you ask me, what is autism? Autism is a lifestyle.
I agree that it was very difficult to do things that normal families just do very easily. I also agree that people honestly didn't understand what we were saying, even when we did come out of the closet and say, oh, well, our son has autism. Many years later, after I wrote the book, Saving My Sons, A Journey with Autism, because I wanted to guide other parents in the same boat, and give parents a way forward. And I wanted professionals to understand that the condition is actually treatable and what it really means to raise a child with autism. A lot of my friends would say, but why didn't you tell me what you were going through? And I used to say, but I did tell you what I was going through. And only when they actually read the book could they truly understand and grasp the enormity of the emotions, the physical and emotional trauma that we were going through. I remember in the early days, David wouldn't eat, David wouldn't sleep, he wasn't talking. We started an ABA program. You were trying to work. Do you remember those days?
Very much so. You have to muster every tiny bit of strength that you can to try and fight this. Because even if you do come right, even if there is a way of totally losing the diagnosis, it doesn't happen in a second. The fight is long, it's hard. And I still think to this day, the only person who's going to really understand what I went through, what somebody with a child with autism goes through, is somebody who's going through that same thing themselves. Other than that, I don't think anybody can actually fathom what it's about.
So, Mart, remember, David was diagnosed with autism, and then I found that book, Children with Starving Brains, by Dr. Jacqueline McCandless, and we started to understand that there is a gut-brain connection and that we could actually choose certain treatments to improve David's functionality. And then the book led us to the conference in America, Autism One, and you decided to get on a plane. Like, I think it was a decision we made overnight, and the next week you flew to Chicago and you flew to the conference. Share with the other parents what that experience was like. What did you learn at the conference?
It wasn't only what I learned, I think it was the experience. Firstly, in South Africa, most of the doctors don't experience autism. They're not seeing it on a daily basis. You just don't come across it that much. As I said, when David was born, I didn't know what autism was. I'd never seen another autistic child before. It was so foreign to me. So now you've got this diagnosis, and you realize there are other kids in South Africa. Who knows where they are and what kind of help you can get. You feel very lost, very alone. You get on a plane to America, and you arrive at this conference, and there are thousands of people in the exact same boat as you. And so that was very inspiring, very uplifting. It was very comforting to know that I wasn't alone, and that there were so many thousands of people going through the exact same thing as I did. And that for me was the most important thing. I felt supported. I developed a network. And yes, we also learned a fortune from the different lectures. And most importantly, that this was something you could treat, you could do something about it. And that was the start of our journey.
So what treatments did you learn about?
Oh, there's so many. There were diets. there was detox, there was a methylation cycle, there was chelation, there were hyperbarics. There were so many different interventions that you could try at that time. And the experts in America who were seeing the kids every single day, day after day, they have the experience to guide us, and they did.
I actually was cleaning out the cupboard the other night and I found your notes that you made from that conference. I think it's about 18 years ago now. And I remember when you called me from America to say, okay, Lon, we got this. I'm finding help. I've chosen the doctor that's going to help us get David onto the road to healing. We've got to fix his gut. We've got to focus on diet. I just remember this calm that came over me. There was hope. There was a little flicker of light at the end of a very, very dark tunnel, because before that moment, no one in South Africa told us it's treatable. We had to fly to America. And in fact, we continued to fly to America and attend many of these conferences for many, many years, where we would listen to neurologists, professors of toxicology, immunologists, pediatricians presenting on the causes and treatments for autism. And certainly psychiatric medication was not first-line treatment. They were talking about reducing inflammation, supporting the immune system. We learned so much about nutrient deficiencies and metabolic imbalances and how to correct those, and then ultimately how to restore health. And when you restore a child's health, that's when they can start learning and you can start achieving that functionality that you're looking for. Because for a parent to feel that my child's never going to speak, I mean, I don't think anyone can put that ceiling on any child. And I always say to the parents that I speak to, don't let any professional or doctor put a ceiling on your child's development. If one intervention doesn't work, you need to try another intervention. If you're trying a certain intervention, maybe you need to up the dose. Maybe you need to administer that mineral or vitamin more than once a day. There's always something that you can do. I mean, Mart, like over 18 years, didn't we always just find something else to do? And I think that alone kept our hope alive. So I remember you came back from America and you brought probiotics and so many vitamins and minerals for David. And I was so excited to open this box and, you know, we started on our journey. Tell us about diet and what your experience has been trying different diets with David and actually just getting him to eat, because he was a very challenging eater in the early years. I mean, he was picky. It was tough.
It was tough. He was tough. You know, I remember we were trying to get him to go on a specific diet and he wouldn't eat at all. He refused. And I remember we actually said, okay, and eventually the child will get hungry and the child will eat. Let's just leave him alone, because we were trying to force him. We were just so worried that he wasn't getting enough nutrition. He just wasn't getting enough calories. So we said, you know what? Let's just leave him. Nature will take its course and he'll get hungry and eventually he will eat. But he didn't. A day passed, 2 days passed. By day 3, we were panicked. We thought, no, we're in real trouble. We're going to land up in hospital. We kind of caved in. David broke us. Now, he was much stronger than us. And he actually broke us. We went back to giving him all the things that he was used to eating. Because a lot of these kids, they restrict themselves. They only will like certain textures, certain foods that they're used to. And so he was only used to certain things and he wouldn't try anything further. And it took us a long, long time to bring him around. And I think the two happened simultaneously. So, you know, if you want to heal the gut, you've got to give him the right nutrition, but he won't take the right nutrition in if the gut is inflamed. So you first have to calm that inflammation down. And basically, once we did do that, he ate very healthily. I mean, to this day, we give our kids such healthy food, good food. You know, they have a proper meal for breakfast. It's not cereals and processed food. Every meal that we have is carefully thought out and is nutritious. And you know, we can talk about all the different diets that you can try. And so, like you said earlier, there's always something else you can do. If one diet doesn't work, try another diet, and you will definitely see benefits. David had diarrhea. I remember he had sometimes 5, 6, 7, sometimes 10 stools a day, and we just couldn't get it under control. And if we hadn't gone over to a specific diet, a good diet, I don't think we would have ever come right. We couldn't get him out of nappies because he just kept on passing stools all the time.
Since then, I mean, we've done a lot of research, and I know that many of the doctors say that even if your child isn't having 6 or 3 runny stools a day, they can be passing 1 normal stool a day, and they can still have gut flora imbalance, and they can still have gut inflammation. There can be food allergies. And so these things really do need to be investigated and treated. Now, Mart, do you remember? We lived in South Africa. The doctors were in America. You were paying dollar price, okay? It wasn't easy to get the blood test done in South Africa. They wanted urine samples, stool samples, blood. We had to ship this to America. We had to continuously import all the different supplements. Do you remember those days?
Trying to hold down a job, build a career, pay for everything, try all these diets, the emotional trauma of just getting through every single day, because there's the physical part of what you're going to feed him and the blood test, which I'll talk about now. Just the physicality of breastfeeding your child, physically getting him through the day. There's all that emotional baggage that comes with it. Will he ever talk? Will he ever function? What will become of him? How do I explain this to the rest of the family, to friends? All those kind of things. How do you explain to work why you're late? Why you have to run out for an emergency? There's so many things pulling at you during that time. And I can tell you, I hardly slept. I remember being a complete wreck and just trying to push through and get through this time in my life. It was, I wouldn't say a dream, it was a nightmare. And then to go specifically and tell you about taking those samples, so we had so much riding on it. Yeah, we thought, okay, all we need to do is take blood, stool, urine, send it to the right lab in America, and they're going to tell us what's wrong with our child and how to treat. So it's so crucial, it's so important we get everything right. We better take this blood test perfectly. We better read all the instructions. We've got to make sure it gets to America in the correct amount of hours, otherwise the sample will spoil. We were panicked. We were absolutely besides ourselves to make sure that the sample, and then, okay, now we have to take blood for the first time from our child. It's traumatic. I remember I didn't like putting my child through trauma. As it is, we were traumatized enough, and now we had to prick him and take blood, and he was going to scream, and would we find the vein? Which nurse would we take him to? Which nurse would understand that he throws tantrums, that he's very difficult to keep in one space for any period of time? You'd go to a clinic and they would judge you immediately. What's wrong? Why are you such a bad parent? Can't you keep your kids still? What's going on? There were so many things happening at once. And eventually when we did take the sample, get it all right, some had to be frozen, some had to be refrigerated, some had to be at room temperature. And then, we actually we went to, I think it was FedEx at the time, to fill out special forms, to get permits for all the stuff because it was human matter. And then we had to make sure it got to America in time. And we had to time it perfectly. The flight was leaving at such and such time. I had to be at FedEx just before the flight left. It was almost like we were chartering our own flight. And luckily, everything went smoothly. There were many times when it didn't go smoothly. Samples were lost, tears, frustration, but we never gave up. We always carried on. And if the sample didn't work, we took another sample. There were many times where we had to take it over and over again until we got the right thing so that we could start treating and making our child better.
Looking back now, was it worth it? It's 18 years. Would you do it again?
It's not a choice. I didn't feel that I ever had a choice. It was just instinct. It's something we had to do. and I would do it again, because it's, I know you often talk about it is a choice. A lot of people go through a lot of pain and suffering in life, and you always tell me it's a choice how you're going to react, how you're going to carry on with your life. You can either cry and sit in a puddle of tears and just not do anything, or you can choose to act and change your destiny and heal and make progress. But for me, I don't know if it was a specific choice that we made. Firstly, we were both on the same path. I don't think we ever disagreed much about the way forward. I think a lot of parents disagree, a lot. A lot of people get divorced because one parent wants to do it this way, another parent wants to do it that way, or one parent doesn't want to do anything at all. They believe, well, this is a life sentence, let's just make him comfortable. And it's very uncomfortable to actually fight. It's costly to the rest of the family when you're doing this fight, because everything else comes second. Even our second child, Ellie, he came second. He really did. I would say we neglected him a lot. As much as we were aware of it and we tried to give him love and extra attention, he was very neglected. But that was what we had to do. And we always were united. We always decided, I don't think we made a decision. It was just instinct, as far as I'm concerned. We just had to do it.
I always say to parents, don't fight each other, fight autism. And I think we just did it because we did see David suffering and we were suffering. And to see your child unable to communicate, screaming, crying, not sleeping, it's a complete breakdown. And so I don't think there was a choice. We just knew that we were going to do everything possible to pave the way to secure his future. It's been a real roller coaster. It's not been easy at all. I mean, I think we have so much to share with other parents because we only started to heal ourselves when we started to help other parents, because David has been a particularly tough case. A lot of children have shown much faster progress when receiving a lot of the treatments David received, even in the early years. And that actually brings me to applied behavior analysis.